ligaliortorjaariorlunga nunavummiunu maanna oqariartoqatta NDP kutigut in oqausiksaqarumalluta unatartoqsarjuat qangattautiksanginni F-35 miksaanun Dan Davies dana sivuruqtigikaannartavut oqaqatauniaqalluni. I'm Laurie Idlout. I'm the MP for Nunavut and also the National Defense Critic for the NDP. I'm joined by our interim leader, Don Davies, who will also speak after my opening remarks and will answer your questions shortly after that. We are here today to send a clear message to Prime Minister Mark Carney if he meant that what he said in Davos, that Canada cannot buy a single F-35. We do not come to this decision lightly. We know the decision on the Royal Canadian Air Force's next fighter jet has been mishandled by successive Liberal and Conservative governments for decades. Fighter jets are just one piece of NORAD modernization. As we jointly expand NORAD's capabilities, it is important that more than ever that Canada makes a clear decision on our fighter jet to ensure all capabilities are covered. The need to replace our aging fleet is urgent. Air Force personnel deserve better. And I'll say at this point that I do thank the Air Force personnel for their service, especially in these uncertain times. Canada's borders and sovereignty of our airspace are currently being openly questioned by Donald Trump. Trump is the only leader to threaten seizure of another NATO ally, Greenland. And I must say, with my constituents, with the riding of Nunavut, our proximity to Greenland makes this a particularly important issue, given that, for example, Grise Fjord is only 26 kilometers to Greenland. In response to Trump's attacks on our sovereignty, Mark Carney has promised to make Canada less reliant on the states. We are urging and engaging in one of the single largest expansion of the Canadian budget in our history. New Democrats have always opposed Canada's participation in the Joint Strike Fighter program and the procurement of F-35s. Under this program, all spare parts and software is controlled and managed by the U.S. government. Militaries that use F-35s do not have the right to manage their own maintenance, directly purchase spare parts, or manage the software. Under this program, spare parts stored within our borders are still owned by the United States. The proposed fleet of F-35s will be serviced beyond 2060. If we let this deal go through, the United States will leave an effective veto over our fighter jets. They will always have the decision to cut off supply and critical software updates. One of the costs to our participation in the Joint Strike Fighter program is ceding our sovereignty over procurement policies. We have allowed a carve-out of the Joint Strike Fighter program for procurement rules like our industrial and technology benefits. We have exempt them from our procurement strategy for Indigenous businesses, which requires 5% of contract value that should go to Indigenous businesses. This is why Canada cannot move forward with the procurement of F-35s, not 88, not 16, not 1. New Democrats are calling on Mark Carney to cancel the F-35 order immediately and instead partner with Saab to manufacture their Gripen jets to defend the Arctic in partnership with like-minded ally countries. I turn now the mic to Don our interim leader, who will speak to more other topic areas in this matter. Kuya Nami.
Thank you, Lori. This session, the NDP caucus committed to focusing our attention, this Parliament, on Canada's economy, on Canada's sovereignty, and on the security of Canadians. That's why today New Democrats are calling on the Government of Canada to terminate the F-35 contract and move swiftly to negotiate an agreement with Saab to purchase 88 Gripen aircraft. At a time when the Trump administration is threatening our sovereignty, attacking Canadian workers, increasing tariffs on our industries, and interfering in our domestic and foreign policies, going through with any F-35 orders is simply unacceptable. To proceed with purchasing F-35s in the face of Mr. Trump's aggression is fraught with risk, economically damaging to Canada, and contrary to the Carney government's own expressed policies. It's clear that the F-35's economic benefits to Canada are nowhere near proportional to the cost of the program, which has already exploded 50% over budget. Research indicates that the vast majority, over 70% of F-35 production value, will remain within the United States. This aligns with comments from Liberal Industry Minister Mélanie Joly, who has admitted that Canada was shortchanged on industrial benefits from the F-35 contract. It runs counter to Prime Minister Carney's stated goal of retaining more industrial value and jobs in Canada from defense procurement. We know that President Trump has consistently attacked Canadian workers in the aerospace sector and others, and repeatedly uses economic blackmail to force Canada to agree to his policy demands. Just days ago, he threatened to decertify all Canadian-made aircraft, singling out Bombardier Global Express jets specifically, and impose a 50% tariff on any and all aircraft sold into the United States. This is the context in which he asks us to consider purchasing what is the most important aircraft air defense tool that Canada is going to need. In contrast, Saab's proposal offers a path forward that both meets Canada's defense needs and strengthens our manufacturing capacity. Saab would create over 12,000 jobs by setting up Canadian production lines for the Gripen fighter and Global Eye surveillance aircraft to supply our Royal Canadian Air Force and export markets. So Mr. Trump wants to take jobs out of Canada while Sweden seeks to locate them here. Trump would use our dependence to force policy agreement where Sweden has no such intent. In Davos, Prime Minister Carney stated, "We are in the midst of a rupture, not a disruption." He said that the old world order, where superpowers could be trusted to protect us and respect rules, is gone. He called on middle powers to unite against great power rivalry and economic intimidation. And he reminded the world that nostalgia is not a strategy and that we must build what we claim to believe in rather than waiting for the old order to be restored. So the bottom line is that purchasing F-35s from the United States will deepen our military integration with a superpower, not reduce it. Canada will become more vulnerable to American policy pressure, who can threaten to withhold software and spare parts, as Lori has already indicated. And we will be intentionally and unnecessarily sending Canadian procurement dollars and jobs to the United States instead of using that money to create those jobs here. As a firm based in Sweden, a dependable NATO partner, Saab provides Canada with a stable, predictable source of defence cooperation. Two middle powers fulfilling Mr. Carney's stated goals. If the Prime Minister meant what he said, then his actions must match his words. If he proceeds with the F-35 contract, it will prove his speech in Davos was nothing but a public relations exercise. So today, New Democrats call on the federal government to immediately move forward with the Saab Gripen proposal and defend Canadian jobs, strengthen our aerospace industry, properly equip our Air Force, and protect Canada's sovereignty. Thank you very much, and I look forward to any questions that you may have.
Hi, I'm Koja with the Hill Times. I was wondering, if the government makes such a decision to buy the Gripens, how do you think that would affect Canada's relationship with the US? Are you concerned that this might result in further tariffs and tension between the two countries, given that President Trump has amped up his threats over events?
Well, we think that we have to put Canada's sovereignty and security interests first. That's our prime consideration. And, you know, I think Mr. Trump is going to act the way he acts no matter what. So we think that making the best economic, military, and security decision for Canada is the right way forward. And we can't be worried about how Mr. Trump is going to react on a day-to-day basis. What we have to do is protect Canada's sovereignty and put our security interests first.
Quick follow-up, if I may. Multiple defense procurement experts have said in the past that F-35 is the better jet for the Canadian military. Can you further explain how you as the NDP come to the conclusion that Gripens is what the government should buy?
We're convinced that the Gripen more than meets Canada's security needs. And, you know, this is not a day where we're going to delve into the technical aspects of the aircraft. The bottom line is that the politics of the moment have made the selection of the F-35 impossible, in our view. We simply cannot leave Canada vulnerable to the whims of Donald Trump or future U.S. presidents, who at any moment could try to exert pressure on Canada by withholding parts or software to try to make us knuckle under to their policy demands. And you know, this is not just a fictional fear. Donald Trump did this to Ukraine. He threatened to withhold and did withhold parts to the, it was the F-16 fighter jet radar jammers, and left the Ukrainian Air Force in a lurch because of Mr. Trump's policy dictates. And that is not something that we can allow Canada to be in that position.
I apologize. How big of a priority is defense procurement for the NDP going forward?
It's a very important priority for us. I might ask Lori if she wants to comment as defense critic on that.
Sure.
Okay.
As I stated, we're seeing a huge expansion of the budget of the Canadian Armed Forces, and we need to make sure that we're taking more cost-effective approaches, and choosing the Saab is another example of how we could help push for those changes, so that we are adding investments in other issues like Arctic sovereignty, where my constituents, for example, would see great improvements if there was more investments in Arctic sovereignty, so that Nunavummiut can be engaged in Arctic security. At this point, there are far too many barriers for Nunavummiut to be engaged in Arctic security because of the lack of balance in how the budgets will be spent. So we need to see also investments in housing, investments in addressing food insecurity, investments in the healthcare, so that Nunavummiut can remain in the Arctic for basic medical care. So seeing this change is an important overall change that we expect to see. That's how important it is for us.
At this point, have you shared any of these concerns directly with either the Procurement or Defense Minister?
Not at this point, but we will for sure make sure to share that as soon as possible.
For either of you, just on a separate topic, during the standing order debate on Friday, Liberal MP Corey Hogan plans on bringing forward some requests for question period reform, namely longer answers for the government, saying that the current 35-second format, it doesn't serve Canadians properly. Just what do you think of what Mr. Hogan plans on proposing?
Well, we haven't had a chance to see that proposal or discuss it as a caucus, but I'll say, don't know if we need longer answers. We certainly need better answers from the government. They could start there.
About NATO commitments, of course, Canada has pledged to raise those to 5% of GDP in the coming years. I guess, does the NDP think that's the right thing to do, and is it sustainable?
Well, in a word, no. There was never any talk of raising to 5% during the election campaign. The talk was always on Canada meeting our 2% NATO targets, which the NDP supported. 5%, I'm not sure if Canadians realize the magnitude of that. It's a greater share of GDP than the United States spends. We have a $3 trillion a year economy, so 5% is about $150 billion by 2035. Our current budget's about $650 million. We're talking about 1 out of every $5 going to the military. I'm not sure that is the proper balance to have. What we do think, and what Canadians do agree on, is that we need to properly equip our Canadian Armed Forces. Successive Liberal and Conservative governments over decades have done a terrible job in making sure that our men and women in uniform have the proper equipment, training, supplies, and resources that they need. And New Democrats do believe that needs to be addressed. I also think that there's social utility to a lot of military spending. There's dual use. So, there's an opportunity, if we spend our military expenditures correctly, to not only increase our defense capacity, which I think is important, but also build necessary infrastructure that has been ignored for too long. Airstrips in the north. Laurie and I were just in Rankin Inlet, where they have a landing strip that is gravel. I don't think you can land a military aircraft on it, and there's only one runway. So expanding that airfield so that military aircraft could land there will also have the benefit of increasing access of Rankin Inlet residents in and out of Rankin Inlet. I also think that equipping our armed forces to respond to natural disasters is something that would be a wise investment. We're seeing increasing wildfires and floods in the summer, and making sure that our armed forces would be able to respond to that, I think, is a good use of resources and something that has, again, as I say, social benefits. So I think the 5% is a figure that we haven't really internalized yet. I think it's disproportional to what our other needs are, but certainly investing in our armed forces is something New Democrats support.
If I may.
Oh, yes.
I just needed to do a very quick correction. Rankin Inlet does have a paved airport. Nunavut's 25 airports, there's only 2 of them that are paved, Inuit and Rankin Inlet. But to add to Don Davies' point, there are far too many that are not, like the Cambridge Bay Airport, which is gravel, and that has created additional cost of living for the region of the Kittlemeute because of the airline's choice not to stop using jets that were more cost effective and switching to ATRs that are less reliable and end up seeing more cancellations with passenger flights as well as cargo flights. So multi-use projects are absolutely important. If this Liberal government were to meet its targets, using multi-use facilities is a great way to go. There are a lot of opportunities for Nunavut to provide services with NATO spending, target spending, national defense spending that would serve national defense, like the Qikiqtaqjuaq port that's been in the works for years, that we've heard from Nunavut are asking for more dollars so that they can serve additionally as a national defense port. So there are many opportunities where if we are to meet those targets, those opportunities could be in multi-use projects.
Idlout, so the federal government made a housing announcement for Nunavut on Friday with the government of Nunavut as well. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that and what you think of it.
Even that announcement was not enough. I know, for example, that the original amount of 700 was nowhere enough to meet the housing needs of Nunavummiut. I recently reached out to my constituents asking people to tell me what their realities are in terms of being on a public housing waiting list and how long they've been on waiting lists for. And the majority of the over 300, 400 responses from Nunavummiut since I posted it yesterday have been over a decade. Many families are in overcrowded housing conditions for too many decades, and to say that they'll only add 25, 50 more will not meet the needs of Nunavummiut. So what we do need from the federal government is sustained efforts, not one-time project, not one-time budget announcements, but sustainable, consistent investments over the next 20 years, 30 years to show that they'll keep investing in housing, to show that reconciliation with Inuit in Nunavut specifically is important to them.
Any further questions?
I was wondering if either of you had any reaction to the fundraising numbers that we saw come out at the end of last week, which indicate that Avi Lewis may be pulling ahead in the leadership race, if you had any reaction to that.
Well, I'm not going to get into individual candidates, but I think the very impressive fundraising by Mr. Lewis and frankly the other candidates bodes well for the excitement that their leadership is generating among our membership.
Do you think that as a leader for the party, either of you, he would take things in the correct direction, or do you have any comments there?
You know, as leader, I've from the beginning remained neutral in the race, and so I don't have any comments on the various candidates. What I will say is every one of the 5 candidates that I've seen is impressive and is bringing a unique vision to our party that I think is exciting New Democrats across the country, and whoever wins, I think is going to be a strong, bold leader for our party and will lead us to, I think, success in the future.
I have a question about the NDP's for the budget, which is of course working its way through committees this week. In the public service, as you know, workforce adjustment notices are going out about job losses, and while the budget is going through committees, it includes the early retirement incentive provision for public servants who are 50 or 55. Does the NDP support this provision within the budget as a way to shrink the public service? And do you support the budget being passed?
Well, first of all, we didn't support the budget. We opposed the budget. Okay, I voted against it. 5 of us voted against it and 2 abstained. And we could not support the budget. There was not a single yes vote from the NDP caucus on that budget. And one of the many reasons we didn't support the budget is because Mr. Carney broke his election promise, where he said he would cap the federal civil service, not cut it. And of course, he gets into office, and then we are looking at 40 to 50,000 job cuts in the public service. This is during one of the worst unemployment crises in a decade, particularly among young people, where 1 in 5 young people is out of work or looking for work. So cutting jobs in a jobs crisis is the wrong way to go. But besides that, these are services that Canadians are going to have to do. So, you know, processing passports, having your old age security checks mailed on time, having someone to answer your call at CRA. These are the real life impacts when you cut tens of thousands of jobs. The question you ask about the method of cutting it, attrition as opposed to laying off, I think is academic. It's a job lost. And it's a job that won't be there for someone to fill, to feed their families, and it's a job that is not available for a young person to aspire to. So it's absolutely the wrong way to go. We don't support the job cuts. We believe in a strong, well-resourced federal civil service delivering services to Canadians that they need.
Thank you. This concludes the press conference. Merci, c'est cette conférence de presse.
Merci beaucoup.
Okay, there you go. And you can leave any thoughts in the comments. Please like, follow, and subscribe. Thank you for joining us. Have a good afternoon.